Senior advisor and spokesman for the White House counsel's office and special assistant to the president, Ian Sams. Ian, thank you for being on the show this morning. As you just heard from Congressman Schiff, it's sort of unusual to leave a SCIF with anything that is classified, take home classified documents. How did this happen?
Look, I think you've heard the president speak to this. You've heard the president's personal attorneys speak to this. That's why the president and his lawyers offered up access, unprecedented access, I should add, to every single room of the president's personal home to ensure that any documents that need to be properly in possession of the government are taken and are in proper possession of the government. So from the very beginning, when the team first discovered materials, they've handled this the right way. They've handled it responsibly with the proper authorities, first with the National Archives, then with the Department of Justice. And that may be a contrast to what we've seen in the last few years, but this is a president who believes in the rule of law, a president who understands the importance of an independent Justice Department. And so he's giving them access to the information they need to conduct a thorough review. And the DOJ at the end of this review will be able to present the full set of facts.
Okay, so I mean, it didn't answer my question really, but I agree it's been handled completely differently. There's a big contrast to the Mar-a-Lago documents. Put that aside for a second. How could this happen? And do you agree having classified documents outside of where they should be is a serious issue?
Yeah, look, the president takes this very seriously, as you heard him say multiple times in the last week. And, you know, I understand the question about how this happened. Yeah. And I think it's really important to understand that's exactly the type of thing a Justice Department investigation would be looking at. And so when you appropriately believe in the independence of a Justice Department to be able to conduct investigations free from undue influence and interference that this president has committed going all the way back to the campaign, you know, that is why we're deferring to the Justice Department to answer some of these questions. They're going to be tasked with finding all the facts, putting it all together, understanding exactly what happened, asking the questions. That's appropriate. That's why we're fully cooperating, to understand how this happened. And the president is giving them access to what they need to answer it.
Does the DOJ need to tell the president why the president has classified documents in his home? I don't understand that.
Well, Joe, I understand the question, and I think that it's really just gets to the heart of the matter. The DOJ is the one who's tasked with finding out all the facts here. And the DOJ is going to ask questions, and the DOJ is going to seek information. And we're being fully cooperative with that process. We hope that that process moves forward thoroughly and efficiently so that we can get all the answers out there. And so we're just going to be respectful. I think it's more appropriate for questions about the underlying investigation to be addressed by the Justice Department. But again, we're going to offer up full cooperation and ensure that they have access to what they need.
Okay, Ian, the question, though, I'm sort of stuck on here is I understand that there is an investigation, there's a limit to what you can say and all that. But there are obvious possibilities here as to how in the world this could have happened. Are there any that you can share with us?
Well, again, I understand you're asking these questions, but we want to be very careful to respect the investigation of the DOJ. And look, they're going to ask these questions. They're going to be the ones to answer these questions and to provide information on it. And we want to make sure that we respect that process as it plays out. Look, there's going to be a tension here. We understand that there's going to be a tension here between the kinds of information and public disclosures that you all in the media want to be able to try to explain this to the American people. But you had Lawrence O'Donnell on last hour. I heard him talking about this. I thought it was very wise. You know, they're the ones who are going to look at this. You know, they're the ones who are going to provide the final fact set. And we're being responsible not to interfere with that process and to make sure that they can be the definitive answer to that process.
Here's some of what the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Dick Durbin, as well as Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia had to say yesterday when asked about this very issue. Take a look.
To think that any of them ended up in boxes in storage one place or the other is just unacceptable. At its heart, the issue is the same. Those documents should not have been in the personal possession of either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Embarrassed by the situation, as he should have been, he invited the government agencies in to carefully look through all the boxes he had accumulated. It's a much different approach. It is outrageous that either occurred.
It's unbelievable how this could happen. It's totally irresponsible, and who's at fault? But with that being said, putting it in a political kangaroo court's not going to help.
So high-level members of the administration were taken by surprise by this, to say the least. Ian, do you agree with what the senators had to say? Should the president be embarrassed? And, was he surprised to learn that he had documents that were classified?
Yeah, look, the president said this himself last week. He was surprised to learn this. His lawyers, when they discovered them, made him aware. Look, I think that there's something here that, first of all, both Dick Durbin and Joe Manchin, they understand that the president is acting responsibly. They understand, you heard from Dick Durbin, Senator Durbin, that we're working responsibly with the DOJ throughout this process and being fully cooperative with them. There was a comment that was made, I think, something about the political nature of this. Look, I think the American people are smart enough to understand what's going on here. And when it comes to his, the standing of the president with the American people, they can see that he is taking this course of action of believing in the rule of law and being cooperative with the Justice Department. And when it comes to his standing, they also know that he's focusing on the priorities that matter to them. When you think about when we came into office and 9 million people had lost their jobs, and over 2 years, we've created 11 million jobs. When you think about the hundreds of thousands of businesses that closed during the pandemic, and just last week, we learned that record numbers of small businesses have applied to open just in the last 2 years. And this month, we're implementing the CHIPS and Science Act, the IRA, the infrastructure plan. These are the things that the president is doing that directly impacts and improves the lives of the American people. And they're smart enough to understand that we can both participate in an investigation and continue the work of the American people.
And I actually think the list that you just gave us of accomplishments is why a lot of Democrats were like, come on, when this broke. And you heard Congressman Schiff just before this interview. He walks into a SCIF, checks for his devices, he walks out, makes sure he doesn't have anything. A lot of people are asking, how could this happen? And that's the answer that we're stuck on. There's no answer being provided.
Well, again, I'm going to stress this again, and I understand that there's a desire for public disclosure of information, that there's a desire for facts to come out, but it's important that the full set of facts be gathered by the Justice Department and then presented publicly so that people can understand all of these details. That is the job of the Justice Department, an independent, strong Justice Department to do. And so we're going to be fully cooperative with that process to ensure that they have all the information they need to define the full set of facts, and then we'll be able to talk publicly more about the conclusion of that investigation and what it uncovered.
Ian, the American public does not know, and maybe you don't know, the date on which all of these papers were deemed to be classified, whether it was 6 years ago or 16 years ago. But do you have an opinion on when or if the papers that were found will be listed publicly as to what they were all about?
Well, Mike, I think that's a great question, and I think it's exactly the kind of thing that the Justice Department will be doing as they review the material and documents that have been properly handed back into possession of the government. Again, as soon as our team and the lawyers for the personal side of the president have noticed these materials, they've handed them over to the proper authorities. They're the ones who are in possession of these documents. They are the ones who are going to be pouring through them to understand the fact pattern. And that's entirely appropriate for them to do. And it's frankly why the president, in his commitment to the rule of law, has given the DOJ access to the information that they need. And so we're going to let that process play out. It's appropriate for the DOJ to be looking at that information and to be kind of explaining and looking specifically at the details of the underlying material. That's why we're giving them access to what they need.
Hey, Ian, good morning. Jonathan Lemire. Certainly, we don't need to stress again the differences between this case and that with the former president, but there has been polling in the last week or so that suggests American voters, including Democrats, a majority of them are not happy with how this has been handled by this White House. And part of that might be because of the confusing messages. Twice in the last week or so, 2 different times, there's been White House put out statements suggesting that the search for these documents were complete. And each of those times, more documents were therefore found. So explain that, how that could happen, and also, do you understand the sense of is that hurting the credibility of the White House as you are trying to tell the American people, hey, we're trying to do your business while doing this too?
Jonathan, thanks for that question. And look, I think in any investigation, I talked a little bit about this last week when I took questions from the press corps here at the White House about this. In any investigation, information develops. That's the nature of an investigation. They're looking at facts, they're getting documents, they're looking at different people who are involved in this and trying to piece together the full story. That's how an investigation is supposed to work. And so as that happens, of course, information will develop. And we've been following the DOJ's lead through this process. The initial searches conducted by the president's personal attorneys were coordinated with the DOJ. We offered access when additional document was found for the FBI and DOJ to come in and look through the house and make sure unprecedented access to every room so that they could take away any additional information that they need as part of their investigation. And so, you know, there's a desire for us to release more information. We're doing our best to release information consistent with that ongoing investigation and to respect its integrity. But at the end of the day, information is going to develop through this process. We're following DOJ's lead, and we're going to be fully cooperative with that process.
Okay, Ian, are there any possibilities that there are documents at other locations owned or used by President Biden in the past?
So the president's personal lawyers and DOJ are in communication, and they're making sure that they're coordinated on the next steps of this investigation. Look, we're going to be really careful not to talk about potential future steps and developments in the investigation itself because we respect the independence of DOJ to conduct this thoroughly and fairly on their own accord. And so I'm just not going to get ahead of that process in questions like that.
Okay, so there's a possibility. I don't know. A senior advisor.
Wait, well, hold on a second.
One more?
And I just want to explain one thing to you.
What?
We know that Friday was your birthday. And so
Happy birthday.
Mika thought, what was it, your 34th birthday, 35th birthday? How old are you?
It's my 34th birthday.
34th birthday.
He really hates you right now.
That's what I thought.
He hates you right now.
Because,
Thanks for at my birthday party on national TV with you. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Well, Mika wanted, instead of giving you 34 candles, she wanted to ask the same question 34 times. How did it happen? How did it happen? How did it happen?
Well,
So
he gave me 34 different ways of answering.
We're happy to take the questions. We're happy to take the questions.
Okay.
We're happy to take the questions 35, 36 times. We'll see.